And so many people get it wrong, and there's just no excuse. Hello everyone, and welcome to Chatting Transformation, the Change and Transformation podcast designed to make your change and transformation journey that little bit easier. I'm Barry. I've been in change and transformation now for around about 20 years, and I'm making this podcast to help pass on my learnings, my opinions, my lessons learnt, so that you can take those things and hopefully it makes your journey that little bit easier. Now, if you're watching on our YouTube channel, please don't forget to like this video and to hit the subscribe button. That will really help us create great future videos for you and create some great content. You were in the middle of our Agile series of Chatting Transformation, and if we think back to episode 8, we did an introduction to Agile, and a key takeaway was that Agile is about creating a mindset, and that mindset is teams thinking about why and how they work in a certain way, and then being open to continuous improvement in the way that the work is done. Now, in episode 9, we then introduced what we called the Agile Manifesto, which is a document that was created right at the birth of Agile and talks about 4 Agile Values and 12 Agile Principles. And in that episode, we talked through the Agile Values and explained a little bit more about how they're there to embed an Agile mindset. And in this episode and the next episode, we'll talk through the 12 Agile Principles. So in this episode, we'll talk through the first 6, and we'll do a little bit of understanding about how they help to bridge between the high-level Agile values and the reality of daily delivery. So as I said, the Agile Principles are 12 statements that are there to help establish the tenets of an Agile mindset. Remember that Agile comes from a world of software development, so you need to be open to interpreting some of the terminology and wording in a less than literal way. Take a step back and think about how the principles, the values, the effort behind what is being written can be applied in your organisation. We'll get straight into it, and I'll pop the principles up on the screen for those that are watching on video. So, principle 1 is that our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. This is about getting a working product into the hands of the customer or user as soon as possible, and it's minimising that time between ideation and launch. Now, you may have heard the term minimum viable product, or MVP, and that's really what we're talking about here. And if you get that minimum viable product into the hands of the customers, you get early feedback from real customers, real users, and that feedback can then be fed directly into the development process and used to inform the future releases. So that's what we're talking about here, is getting that product out there nice and early into the hands of the end user or the customer, getting that feedback and allowing that feedback then to inform those future releases. That's principle 1. Principle 2, we welcome changing requirements even late in development. Agile processes harness change for the customer's competitive advantage. Here we're emphasising the upfront agreement of the detailed end product or output, and fastidiously sticking to that detailed description is often not what the client will need come that end delivery point. We need to think about the impact of changing markets, of changing customer needs, what's happening with competitor activities, things that we're finding as we go through the development of the product, any challenges that arise, any changes that we made. And ultimately, we need to be open to and welcoming of changes to that specification, and that will ensure that the client will get what they need, and that is the ultimate measure of success, not that they get what they was originally asked for and described at a time when no one really knew what the end result was going to be, but it's actually something that the client gets and it fulfills their requirement at the time that they get it. That is the ultimate measure of success. Principle 3. Deliver working software frequently, from a couple of weeks to a couple of months, with a preference to the shorter time scale. Now we're getting into some of the software language here, so remember to take a step back and think about the principle of the principle and how it can apply to your organisation. But principle 3 favours breaking down large deliverables into smaller components and getting them to the customer or user more frequently. This approach has actually been proven to speed up overall delivery processes in many cases. It also reduces the requirements for lots of documentation that you sometimes get in the waterfall approaches, and it does create more opportunities for the team to regularly validate the work with the end user or client. And it kind of links back into what was in the thinking about, was it principle 1 or principle 2? It was principle 1 about satisfying the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. And you'll find as we go through these principles, you'll see that some of them link into each other, they're very aligned with each other, but overall they all come together to embed that agile mindset. Principle 4. Business people and developers must work together daily throughout the project. Now, don't get too wrapped up in the business people and developers terminology. What we're saying here is communication is a key component of a team's ability to succeed. And a successful product or output requires input from all relevant stakeholders, including the end user or customer. And this approach, it builds trust within the team and outside the team to the immediate stakeholders, and it creates transparency, again, both within the team, with other stakeholders, and with other teams that may be involved in development as well. So what we're focusing on here is not disappearing off for 6, 12, 18 months, delivering something in isolation and coming back with a big ta-da moment. It's about communicating throughout, getting the stakeholders involved. You can see how it links into the previous principles around regular releases and breaking things down into smaller components, and how all of that comes together to ensure that there's lots of collaboration, building trust and transparency through the delivery. Principle 5. Principle 5 says build projects around motivated individuals, give them the environment and support they need, and trust them to get the job done. Now, when we talked about the Agile mindset a couple of episodes ago, we talked about how it's delegating authority about how the work is done, not what the work is, but how the work is done, to those that are best placed to deliver it. And what it's about is empowering individuals and teams through autonomy and trust. In order to do that, though, you need to be really careful to build the right team, and that needs to be the right people with the right skill sets to get the job done. You might have some fantastically skilled people, but they just, well, for whatever reason, might not be able to work together. So it's not just about putting in the various skill sets you need or the roles, it's about making sure those people can work together. And as your teams progress in Agile, you'll find that some teams gel, others don't. You need to be able to play around with the teams, etc. Some people aren't a good fit, others are. But once you start to build a good, high-powering team, you keep those teams together, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in future principles and protecting that team. But it's building high-performing teams of the right people with the right skill sets to get the job done. Now, if we're going to empower individuals and teams through autonomy and trust, then it's really crucial that responsibilities and accountabilities are clearly defined at the beginning of a project. That should be expected regardless of whether we're using Agile, Waterfall, whatever the structure. But in this case particular, where we're giving people autonomy, they need to absolutely understand what responsibilities come with that, what accountabilities come with that, and where certain accountability responsibilities may sit elsewhere in the organisation that they need to be aware of. That's Principle 5. Principle 6, the most efficient and effective method of conveying information to and within a development team is a face-to-face conversation. Wow, this is a political one given the current state of remote working and hybrid working and virtual teams, but actually that's not what this principle is about. And this principle can apply where we're all working in the same room or we're all working completely remotely. It's about human interaction rather than purely through collaboration or chat tools such as Slack or some of the Microsoft products or Google products that we have. It's about having real conversations. It's about encouraging stakeholders, team members, customers, end users, anyone that's involved to communicate in real time about the product, about the requirements and the way in which they're being delivered. So, as I said, it's not about we all have to be co-located in the same room. It's not about we have to use this certain collaboration tool over this one. It's about having open real-time discussions. That's the best way to communicate, and it's the most efficient and effective method of conveying information. So those are the first 6 Agile principles, and you can clearly see how they start to bridge between the high-level Agile values and the reality of delivering daily. Now, in the next episode, we'll talk through principles 7 through 12, and you'll see how there's common threads through all of these principles, and they all come together to start to tell that narrative of this is how you do the Agile mindset in your team. This is how you work in an Agile way. But for now, thank you very much. Another reminder that if you're watching on YouTube, please do hit the like button or like this video and subscribe to our channel. All I've got to say is thank you very much for listening.